John Kerry has spent most of his life in public service.
Wrong segue.
He fought in, the gentleman's time has expired. He fought in the Vietnam War and became an anti-war activist when he returned home in 1984. He was elected to the U.S. Senate. He served for 28 years, including as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Most recently, he served as President Obama's Secretary of State. He was a chief negotiator of the Paris Climate Agreement and the Iran nuclear deal. Kerry's new book is called Every Day is Extra. He shares his life story from growing up as the son of a diplomat to becoming America's top diplomat decades later. Every Day is Extra is published by Simon & Schuster, a division of CBS. Mr. Secretary, good morning.
Thank you, John. Happy to be with you.
Speaking of the presidents and presidency, you had an interview on Face the Nation to which the President Trump, tweeted about you possibly running for president. And he said, "I should only be so lucky." What's your response to that?
Well, you know, the president, I'm really not going to get into a back and forth on tweets. You know, I could give him a nickname, Agent Orange or something, and I could get back and forth, but it doesn't take you anywhere. The president uses tweets as a weapon of mass distraction, and he obviously has exposed the world to the potential of a weapon of mass destruction in Iran by pulling out of a deal that everybody in the world supports. So I'd rather stay on the substance because he wants to distract it and get into a fight. I want to stay on the real.
But let's not miss his point, though, because he's saying he hopes you run because he believes he could beat you, is what he's saying.
What he says that, look, nothing he says you can believe, and you always know there's a different motive. So let's not even get into that. What's important is, frankly, in my book, I lay out the challenge to our country. It's not a policy book. That's what's important. It's a story of a life that shows how we can confront the challenge that we face in America today. And that's really more important, frankly, than listening to a guy who, as President of the United States, can't even go to the funeral of a war hero. That's the real issue before the country. What is that?
Is it a moral issue before the country?
No, it's all kinds of things. And I write, again, in the book, I lay out. Look, I'm an optimist, and the book is a book of optimism, and it's an insight, not a policy book, but an insight to how individual citizens can bring us back from the brink. We've been through this before. We had Richard Nixon in 1970, 71, 72, 73, breaking the law, attacking the Justice Department, enemies list. We had, riots in the streets of America. We had people being assassinated in '68 and before that. So it was a rough time in our country, and it's citizens that brought us back from that. And this book, I think, is a roadmap through stories about people's lives and how the Senate changed and what happened. And I think it shows people where we can make the difference.
But Nixon ultimately resigned. I doubt that
because he broke the law and because he was about to be impeached.
Well, you went to high school, St. Paul's, with Bob Mueller, who is the special counsel. I know you played sports together. You've known him. You're the same age. Served in Vietnam at the same time. Do you believe that his report will be taken seriously by both Republicans and Democrats in Congress, that they would move forward in some way in terms of removal of office or whatever it may be?
I believe Bob Mueller is an incredibly qualified, capable, straight-up public servant. He was a great leader of the FBI, unprecedented tenure. He is going to come out with whatever he comes out with, what he believes represents the truth. And then it's up to the American citizen, not Democrats and Republicans, but the American citizens to decide how they respond to that. And we're lucky to have somebody as qualified as Bob Mueller to take on this task.
You talk a lot about the truth in your book. May I mention it? Every Day is Extra.
Please hold it up.
because you're right. It's more than just policy. There is some policy, but it's very anecdotal. You said you learn that when you push for the truth, people who are invested in lies retaliate. Do you think that's happening today, number one? And you always say, but the truth is worth fighting for.
Well, it is happening today. Of course it's happening today. Unfortunately, the president attacks people who tell the truth. In fact, we have a party that regrettably has turned its back to some degree on the truth. And I think it's very, very regrettable.
Meaning the Republican Party?
The Republican Party and the Senate particularly, but also in the House. Truth has less currency than it should have in a democracy of our quality. Truth is the essence, and you have baseline of facts. You need to be able to know what the facts are. we've entered a new period of life. I mean, I saw it in my campaign. Norah, you remember. The attacks against me were sort of the beginning of alternative facts. And now we see this on a regular basis. Facts don't apparently matter to some people. I believe they matter to the American people. John McCain believed they mattered to the American people. John was always ready to tell the truth. And I think the last days have been a reminder of that value that is so important to America. And I write about it. I have a whole chapter in the book about John McCain and our journey together.
You said that you flirted, but you never dated. That at one point you all considered running together, that you thought
we had a couple of very serious conversations about it, and it obviously didn't happen. John evidently liked the idea because he then thought about it with respect to Joe Lieberman in the next round. But again, the same kind of difficulties that we confronted apparently rose, and it wasn't doable. But the spirit was there. And what's important is John stood up for the truth during that campaign, too. And we, you know, again, when John was attacked in South Carolina, I write about this in the book. You know, Chuck Hagel, Republican, John Kerry, Chuck Robb, Bob Kerry, the Vietnam veterans came together to defend John McCain against these attacks which were made up and without facts. So the book is a defense of our country, but it's done, I think, in a way that I hope is very personal. First of all, it's personal. You know, I'm as candid as I can be about my life.
Can we talk about North Korea? Because as you know, that is probably one of that is considered by our intelligence experts the greatest national security threat facing our country right now. What's wrong with talking with Kim Jong-un and what the president meeting with him?
Absolutely nothing wrong. I'm a great believer in reaching out and engaging and talking, but you have to do so with a strategy. You have to do so based on facts, and you have to not raise expectations on yourself in a way that defeats your goal. What President Trump did was basically give Kim Jong-un the meeting that he and his father and his grandfather always wanted with the president of the United States.
But he stopped the missile testing.
Without getting the kind of intrusive inspection or accountability that you need for his weapons. And that still hasn't happened. But Donald Trump stood up in Singapore and said, oh, it's all good now. The issue's gone away. There's no nuclear threat. When in fact, our intelligence community is saying there's a greater threat today than there was before he had his meeting.
But that's just one gamut. Okay, it doesn't work. Now they're back to where they were. But at least he got the missile testing stopped. He got a meeting of the two countries that was some progress. He got everything on track.
But the missile testing right now is a matter of common sense for Kim Jong-un. If he were missile testing now, he would invite a war. He knows that. But he's reached a level in his weaponry that the threat has grown. And he is not denuclearizing. Denuclearization was the goal. Donald Trump announced denuclearization. But there's been not only no denuclearization, there's not even a common understanding of what it means. Now, in my book, I try not to get people, you know, dragged into some long policy discussion, but I show how on a number of different issues, the way we did the Paris Accords, where we are now on climate change. Climate change is an existential threat to our nation.
Are you thinking about running in 2020?
We're not doing, no.
At all?
I've said again and again, and it's hard to get away from it, but I mean, I doubt very much I'll be running for office again. But I'll say this, that no one should be focused on 2020 right now. We should be focused on 2018, because the magic number for America to think about is 54.2. That was the number of eligible voters that turned out to vote for the presidency in 2016. When I ran in 2004, it was 60.4% turned out. When Obama was elected in 2008, it was 62.5. What we need people to engage and make a difference. And in 2018, we have a chance to have a course correction. And I think in my book, I lay out the ways that people can really engage and do that.
Thank you. We are out of time. But Secretary Kerry, thank you for being here.
My pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much.
A lot to talk about.
Yes.